Hi, my name's Paul, and this episode is part of a series called Glimpses of Jesus. We're taking a journey through the Old Testament section of the Bible. We're looking at the main events and asking how they point us to Jesus and salvation in Him. Currently, we're in the book of Exodus. God has stepped in and saved His people from slavery in Egypt. Now, en masse, they head out into the desert. Now, I don't know if you've ever had surgery. Beforehand, the surgeon and the anaesthetist come and see you. They'll check the operation you're in for and remind you of any risks, and then present you with a consent form to sign. Before you put your pen to paper, you have to decide whether these people can help you. They're going to be putting you to sleep and cutting you open. Can you trust them to make you better? That's really the question Israel need to answer as they leave Egypt. They're on the run from the world's biggest superpower, who are about to realize it was a bit silly to let their slave labor force go. And Egypt are not the only dangerous nation out there. Can Israel trust God to save them? That's also a question we need to ask too. Can we trust God to help us in our lives? Can we trust Him to save us from sin and bring us into eternity? In Exodus 13 and 14, these questions are answered. God takes the people to the edge of the Red Sea, and the armies of Egypt swarm after them. But it's okay. He's got this. God has already proved that He's powerful and cares for His people. And as they leave Egypt, God gives a visible sign that He's with His people. In Exodus chapter 13 and verses 21 to 22, we read, "The Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to lead them on their way during the day, and in a pillar of fire to give them light at night, so that they could travel day or night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never left its place in front of the people." Yet God also knows that despite this, the Israelites aren't finding faith easy. That might seem strange as we look back from our vantage point. These are a people who have seen how strong God is and the reality of His gracious love for them. Surely all doubt would have dissipated. But faith doesn't always take a logical path. Some friends of mine had a well in the entrance to their house. There was thick glass over the top with a light underneath to show how far down it went. When the light was off, I could stand on the glass, no problem. When the light was on, I could see the huge tunnel burrowing down. Suddenly, I didn't want to stand on that glass anymore. It could hold my weight. I knew that. But faith doesn't always follow logic. The same is true here. God has shown His power and His care, but the people are struggling to believe, and God knows it, as we're told in Exodus chapter 13 and verse 17. When Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, even though it was nearby. For God said, "The people will change their minds and return to Egypt if they face war." So what does God do? The answer is surprising. He doesn't lead them to a place of safety. He puts them in the middle of an impossible situation. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and camp in front of Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol." Now Migdol means fortified land or cliff. So between a cliff and the sea. "You must camp in front of Baal-zephon, facing it by the sea." Where is this? There are different thoughts out there on which sea and the location of the crossing. To me, the argument that makes the most sense is one that places the crossing point somewhere on the eastern finger at the north end of the Red Sea. But the precise position is not as important as understanding the impossible situation. Israel are now caught between a cliff and the sea. When Pharaoh hears about this, he recognizes an opportunity for revenge and plans to sweep down, blocking off any means of escape. Why? Why would God do this? He's just saved them. Why serve them up on a plate for Pharaoh to devour? So that he can teach them that no matter how hard the situation gets, they can trust him. He is able to save them. And the same lesson applies today. Life comes with difficulties, yet no matter what we're going through, and no matter how hard it gets, God is able to help. We can trust him in the hardest times. But our biggest danger is not our circumstances. We're sinners who deserve God's judgment. We live in a broken world where death is a reality. The devil is real, a great enemy who seeks to devour the world and keep all away from Christ. These dangers hem us in. Who can save us? We can trust God. He is able. As we walk through chapter 14, we see just how bleak it gets for the Israelites. In verse 10, we're told, as Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians coming after them. The Israelites were terrified and cried out to the Lord for help. The people of Israel are camped by the Red Sea, miles of water in front of them. Behind them, the sky is filled with dust. Here comes the Egyptian army. The people go into full panic mode. Verses 11 to 12. They said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Isn't this what we told you in Egypt? Leave us alone so we may serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." Do they really mean that? Do they really think that slavery is better than freedom? When we panic, we don't think straight. The people are scared and they're losing the plot. What does Moses do? He gently responds and calls them to trust God. But Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation that he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you must be quiet." What's Moses saying? Remember God, the one who brought you out of Egypt. He's still with us. Just wait and see what he will do. Moses knows the situation looks impossible. It's bleak. It's hard. They can't do anything about it, but God can. He can save them. He alone can save them. It's not just that they can trust him, but they have to trust him. The same is true today. When life goes awry, when governments go in strange directions, when peace dissolves, when families break apart, who do we need? God sees things as they really are. God has complete wisdom and the power to address all things. Only God is able to truly help us. Yet we so easily turn to lesser things. But again, let's look beyond our immediate circumstances. The Red Sea is a salvation story and points deeper than these. What are the biggest realities of life? Sin traps us. Guilt of rebellion hems us in. A judgment comes bearing down on us as sinners. Where can we turn? Who can save? God, and God alone. God who has dealt with sin through the cross. We can't fix this. Only he can. It's not just that we can trust God. He's able to save us. We have to trust God. He's the only one who can save us. But will God save us? There's a difference between being capable and actually doing it. In Exodus chapter 14 and verses 15 to 16 we read, "The Lord said to Moses, 'Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to break camp. As for you, lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground.'" It's hopeless for Israel, but God is with them, and he's going to act. In verses 19 to 20 we read, "Then the angel of God who was going in front of the Israelite forces moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and stood behind them. It came between the Egyptian and Israelite forces. There was cloud and darkness. It lit up the night, and neither group came near the other all night long." We met the angel of God in the burning bush back in Exodus chapter 3. This is God the Son. God himself who has been leading the people. Now his visible presence moves behind them and shields them with an impenetrable wall. Here's verses 21 to 22. "Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord drove the sea back with a powerful east wind all that night and turned the sea into dry land. So the waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with the waters like a wall to them, on their right and their left." This is amazing. I don't know the depth of the Red Sea, and without knowing the exact location, it's hard to pinpoint just how wide it is at this point. At least several miles across. The water is moved left and right, piled up in walls with a pathway in between. Have you ever walked through an aquarium in a glass tunnel and seen the fish swimming beside you? I wonder what the Israelites saw as they stared into the sea around them. Bit by bit, they make their way across, safely to the other side. But there's still the problem of the Egyptians. The barrier is removed, and the Egyptian army heads after the Israelites across the sea. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the water may come back on the Egyptians, on their chariots and horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal depth. While the Egyptians were trying to escape from it, the Lord threw them into the sea. The water came back and covered the chariots and horsemen, plus the entire army of Pharaoh that had gone after them into the sea. Not even one of them survived. Sobering and incredible. What's the lesson for Israel? No matter how frightening the situation, God is not just able to help, He does save those who call on Him. God steps in and brings them to safety. Where are they now? On the banks of the Red Sea, free and looking forward to life in the land of Canaan. Where's the enemy? Lost in the sea. What's the lesson for us today? God is able to save, and God does save those who call on Him. What does that mean? It means when we face frightening situations in life, stuff that happens and it's really hard, if we call out to God, although He doesn't promise to make our lives here easy, He does promise to be with us and help us. He's able to deal with any situation, and He's willing to work for our good. But ultimately, the Red Sea crossing is a picture of salvation from sin. In Jesus, through the cross, sin and death are destroyed. He's already handled our biggest enemies. He's the only one who's dealt with them. And what now? If we believe in Him, He will set us free from sin. If we call out to Him, we will stand in safety, looking forward to life in the eternal land of God, the new heavens and the new earth, a glorious eternity with Christ. God can save. Only God can save. And God saves all who call on Him. He's not just able, He will do it.